All right, when you guys, we're continuing right now. All right, and this is 3-4. We're working with finding inverses and determining whether inverses are also functions. Very first thing I want you to do in the graphing calculator is just type that in. All right, so go to the graphing calculator. If there's a bunch of stuff in your graphing calculator, just hit second plus 712. That should clear it out. Clear. You're going to type in -4x squared plus 1. Hit the graph button. There's your function. Okay? Now, what we just talked about is this thing called the horizontal line test. It crosses it at not one, but it crosses it at 2 places. So what does that tell us about its inverse? Right, so the inverse. So this lets us know that whenever we do find its inverse, the inverse will not be a function. Now that's half your answer, okay? So the first thing, this did not pass the horizontal line test. So you could write for number 3 in your journal and then on your paper when you transfer it over, okay? The inverse is not a function. So that's half your answer right there, all right? And how did we do that? We checked the horizontal line test. So my suggestion is if that's part of your answer, always just graph the original function first, okay? So our original function is f of x, I'm just doing y equals -4x squared plus 1. So right now, this is in function notation, so I'm just changing it to y equals. Whenever you're trying to find an inverse, here's the very first step, okay? Exchange the x and the y variables. So exchange x and y. So if I was going to exchange x and y, instead of y equals, I'm going to start out and put x equals. Instead of x squared, I'm going to put y squared. So that's the very first step when you're trying to find an inverse. Right here is instructions for finding the inverse. If you are dealing with terms of x and y. So whatever answer we get will be the inverse of our original function. After you've exchanged the x and the y, what you have to do now is you have to solve for your y variable. Okay, so we're going to solve for a y variable. So right now, what you have to look at is you need to isolate the y. So how do we, if we look at this right here, how do we isolate the y? What do you think we're going to do? How would I isolate this y? I have -4y squared plus 1. That's right, so subtract 1 from both sides. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. That's how you would isolate the y's. So I'm going to put -1 here. We put -1 here. This zeroes out. Those are not like terms right there, so we're just going to write it as what? X minus 1 equals -4y squared. Now, what I'm going to do, just to make it look a little bit nicer, I'm going to move all of my y's over. I'm just going to put -4y squared is equal to x minus 1. That's just the reflexive property. Okay? Which the reflexive property is if A equals B, then B equals A. Okay? Doesn't matter how you write it, I just like to have things kind of on the left-hand side. All right, so step number 3. Okay? All right? Step number 3. What do you think we're going to do next? Yeah, there we go. So right here, put divide everything. Good job, Brian. By negative 4. I'm going to divide this. I'm going to divide all of this by a negative 4. Okay? So, we're going to have y squared equals x minus 1 all divided by negative 4.
Aren't you going to take the square root of it?
Not yet. Let's just clean this up. This kind of looks a little, yeah, it's a little ugly. All right, so would you also agree, this right here could be, if x is being divided by a negative 4, that would be what? Negative x over 4. And if negative 1 is being divided by a negative 4, that's going to be what? Plus a 1/4. Okay? Which would lead you to, all right, negative x plus 1 all over a 4. So here's what we have. We have y squared equals negative x plus 1 over 4, which looks a little bit nicer than what we had originally. You could also write, or if you wanted to, you could write 1 minus x over 4. These mean the same, they mean the same thing. Okay? Now, what's the final step you were saying, right? Yeah, so take the square root of both sides. Okay, good. So we're going to take the square root of this side, and we're going to take the square root of this side. So y equals. Now, whenever you take the square root of something, okay, and you're dealing with an equation, you're actually going to have two answers. You're going to have a positive, and you're going to have a negative. So let's kind of review something real quick. If I said y squared equals 25, what could y equal to make that statement true? That could equal a positive 5, or it could equal a negative 5. So technically your answer, you would put it's plus or minus a 5. So you'll notice right here I'm going to say plus or minus. So it's not just the positive, so plus or minus the square root of negative x plus 1 over 4. So put y equals plus or minus the square root of negative x plus 1 over 4. Then we're going to simplify it even more. I know. That's why it's in your journal. What can we simplify? Could we simplify the numerator, or you think you can simplify the denominator? Denominator. Okay? So if you have plus or minus this expression right here, you can also break it down into a numerator and a denominator. So look where the radicals are. You could go from the square root of this whole thing, or you could do the square root of the numerator over the square root of the denominator. This one right here can be simplified. Okay? So here's your final answer. The final answer for the inverse is plus or minus the square root of negative x plus 1 all over 2. This is the inverse of our original function. Now, what was our original function? Negative 4x squared plus 1. So that was the inverse of this one. Okay? This one was written as f of x equals negative 4x squared plus 1. This is how you write an inverse in terms of function notation. By the way, this right here is referred to as function notation. Anytime you see f of x or g of x or h of x, those are all function notation. So I'm going to say f to the negative 1 of x is plus or minus the square root of x. Sorry, square root of negative x plus 1 all over 2. This is how you write the inverse using function notation. So what I would like you to do on your paper is, after you've finished it in your journal, just write this down as the answer to your inverse in function notation. You can put it right underneath yours. If you already wrote y equals, just put it right. Just to practice writing what the inverse looks like. If you're taking a test and you're having a multiple choice test, you're not going to see your answer as y equals. This is how you're going to see your answer, as the inverse of x. Okay? So I'll give you a chance to write that down. All right, everybody turn your graphing calculators on. We're going to test this. All right, because our answer should reflect over y equals x. So go to your calculator. You already have the first function in there. Okay? So your first function should be negative 4x squared plus 1. All right? Here's what I want you to type in, how I want you to type in your second function. Could you please do alpha y equals enter? Alpha y equals enter, get you to the fraction bar. Type in second x, second x squared. Delete that. There we go. Go down. Here we go. Try that again. Nope. Eventually I'll get it. There we go. Second x squared right here. Type in a negative x plus 1. Go down and hit 2. Now that's the positive. That's the plus. Okay? But what I want you guys to do is I want you to go down to y3. Remember, we had a positive and we had a negative. So right here for y3, I need you guys to hit this little negative. So everybody please hit the negative button. Then hit alpha, y equals, enter. All right? Hit the negative button first. Okay? Then you hit alpha, y equals, enter to get you your numerator and denominator. All right? Looking good? All right. Next, hit second x squared to get your radical. You're going to type in negative x plus 1. And you're going to go down and hit 2. Now, what I'd like you to do after you do this is go over to where you see that you're... Now, if you don't have a colored calculator, you don't have to do this, because everything's going to be in black and white anyway. But right here, if you have a colored calculator, what I'd like you to do is where you have it highlighted over the black, press enter, and we're going to change our color to red. Because I'd like it to be seamless, like you're graphing everything. All right? You're graphing the positive and you're graphing the negative.
Get the little, the there. Alpha what?
Okay, alpha y equals enter helps you get that numerator and denominator that you want. Okay? Now, what I'd like you guys, the last thing I want you to do before we graph this, is everything and their inverse is graphed over y equals x. So right here in y4, just type in x. And you should see a purple line that's going to go on the screen. Once you have all of these, now you can, if you're watching the video, you can pause me, you can go back, you can see the steps, all that stuff. Right now, hit graph. There's the first graph. Now, to make it look a little bit nicer, all right, if you want to square up the screen where everything is like the horizontal and the vertical looks like perfect squares, hit zoom number 4. What I want you guys to notice, oh, hold on, go back. All right, this graph is your original. This is your original graph of negative 4x squared plus 1. Okay? Then you had two graphs. All right? You had a positive and you had a negative. Both of these graphs together make up the y equals plus or minus the square root of negative x plus 1 all over 2. We had to do both those graphs to get the inverse. Now, here's how you can check it. You guys remember the draw inverse? We're going to go back and we're going to see if we did this right. If we did it right, it'll trace both of these graphs. All right, we're going to hit second mode. All right, you're going to hit second, draw, number 8. And you're going to hit alpha trace, enter, and press enter one more time. And it'll trace it right there. I know you're lost because it had to do it really fast.